Alright everybody, we're back with full track tutorials. I'm going to be breaking down how to make a full acid hard trance track in the style of Kiki, Marlon Hofstadt, Joke's on You, these kind of sounds. You can get this full template, the entire track template, with all the samples, MIDI, presets, and the whole arrangement, everything at the top of the description on my website. So definitely grab that. You can literally build your own tracks, your own EP out of this if you wanted to. Links at the top of the description. Thanks for the support, guys, and let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we have here for the acid trance is the 303. So we got this 303 here, and then we have the same 303, but it's just playing a few less notes in this other part here, and we'll talk about the arrangement as we talk about the elements. So the first thing with this is the pattern. Right, I have this crazy acid pattern, which looks kind of complicated, but it's actually only 2 notes. Just A sharp and B across 2 different octaves. So yeah, and then it's just kind of like the gliding notes. You'll also notice the notes don't quite touch each other. Right, so it's a bit choppier, and it creates a really catchy pattern. Then over here, I just grabbed like a very short piece of that same pattern to make that. And then for the sound on this one, it's operator. So we've got a saw wave and a square wave. The saw wave is an octave up, and there's no FM happening even though it's operator. We've got a bandpass filter with the hard shaper and a very small amount of this envelope right here. Also a little bit of key tracking here, so it kind of changes where it's at, where the filter's at based on where you play on the keyboard. We've got just a bit of distortion and the stereo widener here with the echo, where it's like a really fast delay, but it's on ping pong. So it kind of gives it some stereo width. I have this side chain to the kick, a high pass filter, and then we got this low pass filter, which is really just being used for some arrangement here, right? Just to bring this in on these parts, like on these build-ups, to kind of give it some movement and just make it change up, right? If you just have it without this, right, it's a bit repetitive. This makes it kind of build up and also just makes it not like that same thing over and over. And then here we have the same patch, but it just plays a few notes, just a few A sharps, right? Because that's the key we're in. And it kind of fits in better with all the stabs that we have going on there. Which brings me to this next part. So obviously we kind of have 2 drops here, right? We got this first drop, and then the second drop, which is more of the acid part, right? But in the first drop, it's a bunch of different little synth stabs happening, which include the 303, but there's also a few other things. Like we have some of these classic rave stabs. We have some wavetable stuff. And yeah, we even got this little thing, which just plays on all the upbeats. Really simple. It's just playing A sharp. You have all these little sounds, and then they kind of speak to each other and create the drop. You can hear there's a lot of energy happening there, and then you put that over the drums and bass. So really, to make this, like, you just, if you listen to these all at once, there should never be like a quiet moment. Right, like it's always just constantly something out of these. So with these, you got the 303, you got this little classic rave stab, which has a bit of reverb, and then also in these build-ups, you can see the reverb, just like the dry wet goes up. Which is a great way to build up the track, and then it just drops right there. We got a bit of side chain on this wavetable stab. This really just hits during the drop. Right, these kind of stabs are really popular in like hard trance. The way you do it is it's a wavetable inside of here. It's this clip sweep, and it's actually really easy to make. You just have one oscillator, and then there's an envelope. Just making that, you can see, making that wavetable move. Just as long as you hold down the note. I've got a little bit of OTT, here's without it. So you can hear it just really brings out the mids and highs so that this is like right on top of the whole mix. High pass filter, and then this auto pan side chain. Then we got this one. Just a really straightforward, you know, wavetable. Super saw kind of sound. And this one has a bunch of automation, like we're automating the filter. To just give it a lot of movement throughout the track. Like you can see that filter pretty much never stays in the same place. As far as the sound, it's a saw wave, a bunch of unison, an envelope on the filter, like a really short punchy one, so it'll be nice and tight like that. A bit of reverb, sidechain, high pass, and then another reverb which is really long, and then that automates in the build-ups to make this kind of disappear, and then in this one you really hear it. Then we got this little go stab, which basically plays like two different patterns. In the first half of the track, it just plays once every 4 bars like this. But then over here, once this drops down, it plays this. So it's kind of a good way to just have this like expand a bit, and it also adds to a lot of energy in the track. Whereas over here, you can kind of drop down the energy a little bit by just having it. Right, like there's still a lot of energy, but then when this comes and it's really busy like that, it really adds a lot of energy to the tune. Then we've got our kick and bass. So I've got these in a group for a reason I'll explain in a moment. Let's start with the bass. Right, it's just playing A sharp the whole time through. That's usually how it is with these tunes, like just a 1-note bass. You can see that this is like a bit shorter than a full 8th note. I noticed that the note length really matters because it makes it, like if you can get that the perfect length with your kick, it'll do a lot as far as mixing goes. It really like makes the sound. Then it's a pretty simple sound. It's this drift where I've got these two, right, a sine wave and then the square wave with the shape up a little bit, which might not seem like it makes a huge difference. But see, it brings in a lot more low end and a lot more punch into the sound if you do that. I got a low pass filter here with this envelope 2 on it, which looks like this, just really short and punchy. And then we're just side chaining it to the kick just to make sure it cuts out. Then I got this kick. Now, I've got this new trance kick here that I made. The main thing you'll notice with this is that it's a bit shorter kick. Like, if you want to really look at these, like, if I just freeze these down really quick just so you can see, you'll see that these are not going to get in the way of each other at all. Like, they're really short and punchy, right? Like, you can literally see that the kick gets out of the way right before the bass. Right? Like, there you go. Like, the bass hits, there's space in between them. And that's where these grooves come from, is the fact that there's that space between the kick and the bass in these kinds of tracks. So then we've got those in a group, and it's because of all this arrangement you see, right? There's some parts where the kick and bass cut out together. There's some parts where just the kick cuts out, and then the bass, and it's very easy to do this if you have these in a group together. Plus, there's this high pass filter, which comes in some parts, and like for some of the transitions as well. And it's really easy to do that if you just put those in a group together and they're just being high passed at the same time, right? It makes it really tight. You can also see I've got the beginning and the end high passed. And then in the breaks as well, like, so you can still have that bass there, but it's high pass. You're not getting the full low end. Then we've got a few more little stabs, just these two, which kind of go together. Right? So these are just more of those old school rave stab samples that are used a lot in these tunes. And then I've got them going through the same processing on a group. So here's with no processing. The first thing is just a bit of reverb, which then goes into this OTT here. So you hear that like really brings out the reverb a lot. It also brings out a lot of low end. So then we're high passing it and side chaining it to the kick. And then we got a low pass filter which automates just to bring this in and out in like the break here. Right, you can see. And this can do a lot, like in these breaks, you can just have the same thing playing, but by having this filter kind of coming up, it does a lot for like building the energy of the track there. Then we got our drums. Now these drums are pretty simple. We'll go through them pretty quickly, but I want you to notice that there's not a lot of low end or even mid-range. Right? Like when you hear these, I mean, it's really just a lot of high end on top of the track. And I think that's really important because like with these 303s and the bass line and all the stabs and stuff, you already have so much in that mid-range and high end that if you fight it with these sounds, it's really not going to work. But if you just have some nice bright high end like this, you know, it'll work really well, and it adds a lot of energy too, because all the energy is in the high end. So we got this open hi-hat. You know, not much to say, just a nice short punchy one. We got this clap, which has got a lot of body to it. Like if you play just these and then the kick bass together, right, a lot of the groove is happening right there. We got this drum rack, which I'm basically using as some hi-hats. Like if you hear that with the other one and the clap, it creates like a really cool hi-hat loop. Now the way we're doing this is I've got this drum rack with a bunch of different percussions, making like this pattern. And then we're using the vocoder, which if you put it on, it's on the noise mode by default, so you can do this really easily. And I've just brought the formant up a little bit so it's a bit brighter. And you get these cool hi-hats. Then I got a bit of drum bus to make it even more like percussive. A bit of auto pan so it bounces off of the kick on all the quarter notes. And then a high pass filter, because again, you just want this to be in the high end. We've got one rave loop. You really don't need that many. Too many and it's just going to get in the way of the 303. Just one really full one is great. So we got this. I've high passed it, and I've also got that auto pan sidechain, and then we've got a ride cymbal. Really simple. It's really all in the programming where it goes tss, right. You can see it's eighth notes, but the first one is always a bit quieter, and it creates that groove. Then we got some vocals. I've got this one. Right, these kind of like classic funk sort of vocals. And then this one as well, which really just hits like a lot more sparse. And it's nice because you have one which is really just constant when you want it, but then if you want something more sparse, like in these parts, you can just let that hit like that, right? So a lot of times you'll have like one or two little vocal samples in your track like this, and usually having a loop and then a phrase that just works on its own is kind of the perfect method. Now with this one, I've got a bit of distortion and a high pass into the distortion, which is just because if you turn it off, you can hear it. There's a bit of low end in the vocal, so if you distort that, it can kind of push up against the mids and highs and you don't get as good of a sound. So just high passing it into the distortion can give you kind of a smoother sound. We got a high pass filter after that too, because the distortion adds a bit of low end, some sidechain, and then a low pass to automate it and bring it in some parts. again, like that low pass automation does a lot for just like building tension in your track. Especially because this has so much energy in it, so when it fully comes in, you really notice it. And then on this one, it's just a bit of delay, and then a high pass filter, and then side chaining to the kick. So then we've got all of our effects. There's 5 of them. You can hear it starts with this reverb kick. These are used a lot in these tunes. And what you do to make this is it's not just like a reverb kick. What you're doing is so you're taking your kick. This is the same kick you saw before. Put it into some reverb. But you can see it's not that like full. Like you really need that reverb to be super pronounced. Plus, you don't actually want this kick to be super like in your face. Like you want it to get a bit flattened. So I'm actually limiting it really hard. And then that kind of flattens it out a little so it doesn't quite punch the same as your main kick, but also it brings the reverb tail way out. So you just really hear that there. So that's kind of how those are made. That's like a really classic sound, but there's a little bit more magic to it than just putting reverb on a kick. And that just hits in these like different parts of the breaks. To kind of tell you like, all right, this is like about to get really crazy, right? Then we got this build-up snare. Right, now these are used a lot, and you definitely, like, it's a pretty simple sound. It's basically a snare, and then you're just doing 16th notes the whole time, and automating the volume to go up, right, in the parts where this happens. But also, if you don't do this, where you take this sustain here, and bring it down a little bit, you'll kind of lose some form, like, it can kind of just turn into noise, but then what you do is you bring the sustain down. And see how it's a little bit punchier because you're just really letting through like that transient at the start. So yeah, again, another little kind of secret to that is just having like that little bit of sustain down so that it kind of gets a bit punchier and you really hear the snare. Then we got the crashes. I have 2 of them. These are really simple, right? You can see pretty much they're hitting about every 8 bars. But the thing with these is not just hitting every 8 bars, but also these little fills. And there's different versions of the fills, like this one. Right? But yeah, that little fill with the crash does a lot in the track for like building. And then yeah, it hits. If you don't use enough of these, your track will feel really boring. It doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. So like, definitely don't be afraid. I mean, you see, this is a whole 4 or 5 minute arrangement here. And yeah, it's pretty much once every 8 bars you're getting some kind of crash here, just building up. There's a bit of reverb on those, and that's really all they need. And then the last part is this white noise builder. Which is used a ton in this kind of music. Trance is really like where this was invented. The way that you make this is you basically have these MIDI clips like in the sections that you want. You know, some are really short. And then some are longer like this where it really goes down for a long time and builds up for a long time. So it's nice to just be able to kind of make this and have it be as long or as short as you need. You can see even like this one is super short and it hits with the crash sometimes too, so they kind of work together. But yeah, just having this where you basically have a bit of white noise inside an operator, set the envelope like this so that it's just like a straight up, just a brick. If you hit a note, you hear it. If you let go, you don't hear it. And then what I'm doing is I've got a bandpass filter. A lot of people think that it's a low pass filter, but if you do a low pass filter, it's not going to sound right. Like, I'll show you what it sounds like with a low pass. It just becomes this like it's not really that like sizzle that you want. So the bandpass is very important. And then you notice that it never really goes that low or all the way up either. Like there's a sweet spot where this really happens. Then a ton of reverb. sidechain it to the kick, and then a high pass at the end, because sometimes when it goes down, you get a bit of low end that you don't want. And there you go. You got yourself a really nice little white noise dropper. And that is how you make a full hard acid trance track from start to finish. Thank you very much for the support, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more full track tutorials like this at the top of the description below. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full template at the top of the description as well. So definitely make sure to grab that. You can literally build tons of tracks out of this. Make your own track, make your own EP if you want to. Get this template so you can finally make the track of your dreams. Thanks for the support, everybody. Every bit helps, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.